I mean, these three teams have been by far and away the best sides in the division this season. But right now, none of them are in form.
I think it's just the beauty of the Championship. They are bricking it. It's making these three teams some of the coolest, calmest heads. It's making them crumble. They are feeling the pressure. And again, it's just the beauty of this division, this league. There's no other league can do this.
Hello and welcome to the Second Tier Podcast. I'm Ryan Dilks and I'm joined by the Matt Le Tissier post-Covid to my Matt Le Tissier pre-Covid. It's Justin Peach.
Good day to you, Ryan.
Bloody government making the weather shite. Justin, would you like to start the episode by hearing a passage from the Book of Warnock?
Yeah, you know what? I do. I've missed them. Bring them on.
Can I have a page number from you first, please?
You certainly can. I'm going to try not to say a page number I've already said before, so we're going to go with 63.
63. Oh, God. I will say there's a name which has appeared on this page, which I'm not sure is a good start to the podcast, but, you know, we'll go with it anyway. So this is the Sheffield United manager, Neil Warnock, of course, is being accused of encouraging his players to feign injury in the Battle of Bramall Lane against West Brom. He says, "The way it has all come out so far, you would think I was guilty of committing more crimes than Osama bin Laden."
Different.
Troubling.
Yeah. That's 2005 as well. Jesus, Neil.
Yeah, it's a bit soon, isn't it? And this other one is about Warnock when he was manager of Crystal Palace after they lost to local rivals Charlton. Charlton's players should be disgusted with themselves. If they'd put in that effort when their manager Alan Pardew was here, they would not be in the position they're in. They don't play Crystal Palace every week. So there you go.
Yeah. A tale of two quotes there. Tale of two quotes there.
Yes.
One was bad, one was meh.
One was troubling. Welcome to the Number One Championship Podcast, the second tier. Thank you for joining us wherever you are. And we're here to talk about the midweek action in the Championship. Bloody hell, lads, does anyone actually fancy getting automatically promoted or what? None of the top three won a midweek. They all failed to score as well, which must be the first time that's happened this season. So we'll talk about the state of play in the automatic promotion race / title race. And also Norwich and Coventry both dropped points. So is the top six race back open once again? We'll talk about that. And also bad losses for Birmingham and Huddersfield, meaning the relegation battle is still as hard to call as ever, even with just 4 games left. That's all there is, Justin. Just 4 games left. It's getting hotter than they were. It's getting hotter now than it was during lockdown. Matt Le Tissier.
What way you were going with that?
It sounded better in my head. Anyway, we'll kick things off, Justin, with Millwall 1, Leicester 0. Millwall lose to relegated Rotherham and then beat league leaders Leicester just 9 days later. This league is bloody crazy, isn't it? And just as Leicester win back-to-back games, they look like promotions back in their hands, and then they throw this spanner in the works, Justin.
It's it's quite something, isn't it? We've gone from one of the 3 best teams to ever compete for the automatics to the 3 worst teams. Obviously, that's a jovial take of it, but it is quite bonkers how none of the teams are really making a go of it. And obviously, Leicester to go to Millwall, who coming off the back of 2 really bad defeats, and Leicester coming into this game off the back of 2 really good wins. It was a no-brainer to ever even suggest Leicester wouldn't get 3 points, and then for them to not go with it and not win and not have their bottle, it's quite something. I don't want to be too critical because I actually find it quite funny, the fact that these teams are just unwilling to go forward and get promoted.
Yeah, I think this game in particular was summed up perfectly by Abdul Fattah's hissy fit. What was he doing, Justin? I've never seen anything like it.
He's been chokeslammed. That's what's happened. He's been
by a ghost.
by the phantom of Kane.
It was absolutely remarkable, wasn't it? But so funny at the same time. I've never seen a player. I mean, we see players all the time, like Ronaldo's a perfect example of when they throw hissy fits. But I've never seen a player actually throw a proper tantrum like a toddler. It was absolutely fantastic.
You would though, wouldn't you? Given the amount of chances that Leicester missed, I think that's the most frustrating thing to come away from that game. So if I was Abdul Fattah,
you say that they didn't actually create that many good chances. Yes, they were putting the pressure on Millwall towards the end, but they didn't have golden chances. But carry on with your point.
Yeah, but the chances they missed were quite gilt-edged. Just, it's one of the headers that Patson Daka
yes, possibly the worst header I've ever seen from that scenario. But yeah, I take your point.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, you're putting things on a plate for your forwards, and they're not doing it. They're not putting those chances away. It's bloody frustrating. And look, you're not going to create a boatload of chances away at Millwall under Neil Harris, are you? But you'd expect a Leicester side who have just lost £90 million. They've got some good players. They're spending money on some good players, and they're not putting the ball in the back of the net. I, too, would throw myself 6 feet in the air and land on my spine if I was Abdul Fatawi.
I mean, Leicester were not great at all. A complete contrast to the last two performances where it looked like Leicester were back, didn't it? It looked like Leicester were going to go well on their way to getting promoted, and then they do this. It's really quite astonishing. They created so few chances, and they only looked somewhat dangerous after conceding. And you are right, Patson Daka didn't cover himself in glory with that header, which we did post on the second tier Twitter if anyone wants to have a look at it. Honestly, one of the worst efforts you'll have from a header.
It was harder to miss the target.
Just to hit it, just to get it into that kind. I can understand if he heads it over, but to get it that far off target from where he is quite astonishing. But yeah, that he was one of a few people who were quite guilty of not performing as well as they could do, because, I mean, Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall just wasn't involved here. Ditto Jamie Vardy. Jamie Vardy probably should have been taken off sooner because he just wasn't involved at all. He was essentially a ghost here. Maybe he was the ghost who was choke slamming Steffi Mavididi, Justin. And Steffi Mavididi was lacking an end product. But, I mean, we could go through most of the Leicester team. None of them particularly played well here going forwards. And it just leaves us sat here right now saying, why can't they just get promoted, Justin? They've thrown away a 12-point lead at the top of the league, and then just when it looks like they're once again comfortably favourites for the title, this happens.
It is quite bonkers, honestly, and I think this is what I was being jovial about, the fact that we've got three teams here who we've coined and others have coined, some of the three best teams to ever compete at championship level, but now none of them are going to beat Reading's 106 points record, even though at one point it was looking like they were all going to do it. And it's just that those moments, those pivotal moments that they're just letting slip. And with Leicester, I think this is the frustrating thing. You've got to be going away to 17th in a table on a Tuesday or Wednesday night and getting a result. You have to come away with a result, and this is why it's frustrating. And this is why there's maybe certain imbalances within that Leicester squad, because if Maresca wants to play a controlled style of football, he can't do it with just poachers, for example, as his forwards. He needs players who can play with their backs to goal. They can knit their play to play together. He doesn't really possess that, and I think that's another sort of frustrating thing there for Leicester, because he spent a lot of money on Tom Cannon. He's not that forward, and I know I'm sort of almost feels like I'm making excuses for Leicester, but at the end of the day, if they had players like that and players in their prime and they didn't overspend so significantly in the Premier League, maybe they might have what they need to get themselves over the line. Because at the minute they are tripping over themselves. Have you ever? I don't know. I feel like people don't trip over their own laces nowadays. I just don't think it's a thing. But Leicester are. Like, they are.
I think it probably is still a thing, but
is it?
I think it is.
Who trips over their laces?
I don't know, but I'm pretty sure laces haven't been manufactured so that it's impossible to trip over them now, but whatever the case. I mean, you are right, Justin. It's you've got to ask the question, have Leicester been found out? Because in the first half of the season, they only lost 3 games. In the second half, they've lost 6, and they still have 5 games to go. And in the first half of the season, they were controlling games so well. And look, there were a few occasions that they needed a late winner to get the 3 points, but by and large, they were very successful. And it did at one point look like they could break the 106-point record, because they were miles ahead of Leeds, Ipswich, Southampton, a selection of teams there who are also amongst some of the best teams we've seen at this level. And they've definitely not been anywhere near as good in the second half of the season, have they? I mean, there's still a good chance they get promoted, but they will be stumbling over the line if they do that, because, as we've been alluding to for the past 10 minutes or so, all 3 of these teams suddenly look like they're not playing as well as they once were, and are all having dips at the worst possible time. But what do you think, Justin? Do you think Leicester have been found out?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question. I think it's such an easy assessment to make, because I don't think Maresca's got the ability to mix things up. I don't think Maresca's got the ability to change things and make this Leicester side play a different way. He wants to control. I remember a quote saying not too long ago that he doesn't want his teams playing sort of quick, direct football because they lose control of the ball and therefore they allow opposition to have more of it and therefore create more chances and there's more danger there. But at the end of the day, they have the ball, they run out of ideas. It gets frustrating and players that have that technical quality to really turn the game on its head and really let loose, I guess they don't really have that. They don't really have that license. So yeah, I absolutely do think Leicester have been found out. I do think it's easier to play against them, and I think that's the key thing. That's the key thing about good sides. They constantly mix things up. They find a way. And unfortunately, Leicester aren't. Leeds aren't. And Ipswich sort of are, but also they make it hard for themselves. But with Leicester, I just think that the way they control games, I don't think is as effective as other teams who have done it in the past. You look at Burnley last season, who played a similar style. They found a way. Leicester, no.
Let's give Millwall their flowers, though, because a great result for them. The winner was scored by Ryan Langman, and what a goal that was, by the way. An absolute peach from him. But as I say, a great result, and we'll give credit as well to Neil Harris, because we have been quite critical of him recently. Millwall have been certainly worrying us with their recent results, but this is undeniably a top result from their perspective, isn't it, Justin?
Yeah, it's massive, absolutely massive. I think that the confidence it can give you as well is huge, especially after two really poor defeats, as I was alluding to earlier. When you lose to Rotherham and Huddersfield without scoring a goal, without really creating too much, you're going to suffer a bit of a confidence loss. But at the end of the day, I think the most ideal team in a roundabout way you want you to come up against in terms of Neil Harris' style of play is probably a Leicester side who want to control, because I thought at times Millwall looked so effective on the counter attack. And so quick in that transition that Leicester just couldn't really break them down or find a way through it constantly or consistently. And then Millwall looked dangerous on the counter attack. It was a really good blend. It's just a case of does Neil Harris have any other way of playing? Probably doesn't. That's where it comes undone. But yeah, for Millwall to go away and beat the league leaders at home after two really bad defeats to two relegation strugglers, it's a huge win.
Yeah, to be fair to Neil Harris, his record at the Den since coming back in has been great. It's 10 points from unavailable 12 now, and for Leicester to be amongst the teams they've beaten, it's pretty impressive. It's just their away form, which has been a bit shambolic, and as you say, losing away at Rotherham and Huddersfield is not exactly encouraging, is it? I mean, this is a huge result and may potentially give them a bit of a springboard to try and stave off the threat of relegation, which is still very much a threat, by the way. I have still got concerns for them in the long term under Harris, whether they stay up or not. But every win at this stage in the season is absolutely massive and could set them on their way to staying up, but still a long way to go from a Millwall perspective, that's for sure. Leeds have now won 1 in 4 after drawing 0-0 at home to Sunderland. And Justin, you know what I'm going to say? It's like a pancake right now, isn't it? Just one shot on target at home to Sunderland, who have won 1 from 11. Justin, flat.
You're absolutely right. It is flat, but I think the easiest segue into this was Leeds are falling apart again, because I think now we can say that. He says, biting his lip a little bit. It's
your words, not mine.
They do make fun of it themselves. They make a joke of it, and I'm making a joke of it now. It is flat. You are absolutely right, but we do need to remember again that the impact of the international break was so significant, and as well as that, some key players have forgotten how to play football, like Patrick Bamford. But it's interesting how flat they've become. They didn't create enough clear-cut chances in this game. And for the quality they have, it just isn't good enough. I remember one of the chances they had is Jorginho Ruta was sort of dribbled through and then just sliced it high and wide when he was about 7 or 8 yards away from the goal. It's not good enough. They controlled the game better than they did against Coventry, but they just lack the quality in the final third, which is really problematic. And they didn't really get the rub of the green with some decisions, but you can't be relying on officials spotting everything. You've got to do the business yourselves, and unfortunately Leeds didn't, and they drew to a team who were wildly out of form.
Yeah, we will talk about the penalty decisions because, they may have a case with some of them. But, I mean, you are right. When it's a team like Leeds United who have got the attacking talent that they have, and they manage just one shot on target at home to Sunderland, who are woefully out of form, then if anyone was denying before that they're very flat right now, then how can you possibly defend this? I mean, Crescencio Somerville's the only one offering anything in attack, but even he is really struggling right now. Jorginho Root has not been anywhere near as effective as he has been at several occasions this season. Glenn Kamara, I can't believe how poor he has been recently for Leeds in midfield. And it's also getting to the stage where it's gone from should Patrick Bamford be starting for Leeds to how is Patrick Bamford still starting for Leeds. I know Joel Pirro maybe hasn't hit the expectations that many Leeds fans were possibly expecting of him this season, but Bamford has got to... His position in the team needs to be seriously reconsidered by Daniel Farke because he has been absolutely woeful since the international break in particular. But Leeds have been so flat, and this was probably the flattest performance of the bunch so far. They've got 5 games remaining before this one, Justin, and this was their easiest one, Sunderland at home. And it feels like this is almost kind of undoing all their work from when they won 12 in 13, because that was such a remarkable run to get them back into the promotion picture and make them at one point the favourites for the whole the title. And now they may not get promoted because they are seriously flat right now. We will talk about the 2 penalty decisions not given for them, Justin. 2 shouts for handball. The first one by Dan Bollard. I mean, you've seen them given. I don't think it was a disgrace that it wasn't. Justin, can I just get a yes or a no from you on that one?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the second one that's more contentious for me.
I think that's a fair shout, Justin. I don't think you're causing much outrage there. That one was from Luke 09, and God blimey, Justin.
The thing is, like, it is handball, isn't it? It is.
Yep. I don't think you're causing much outrage just there, Justin.
But my only issue is have the officials spotted it, right?
Yep. Again, not causing much outrage there, Justin.
That's it. I think it's I'm trying to come up with viable reasons as to why it wasn't given, but there isn't any.
No,
there isn't any.
He's essentially punched it away, hasn't he? How it's not been given is absolutely remarkable. I mean, it's got to be. How many times have we said this season, Justin? It's got to be one of the worst decisions of the season. And the standard of refereeing in the Championship is something which we've bemoaned constantly this season. And this is not a great defence when things like this go amiss. And I can possibly understand why the linesman hasn't given it, because Luke O'Nine's arm is slightly in front of Joe Rodon, is it? He was the Leeds player going up for the header, wasn't he? But still, like, how this hasn't been spotted when I think every Leeds fan behind the goal has shouted for handball is just, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, I think the only thing is, like, O'Nine's hand is on Joe Rodon's head, isn't it?
Yes, kind of.
So it's almost like Rodon's like headed his hand and therefore it's hit the ball as well. I'm not saying it's not a penalty. I'm basically saying that I imagine maybe from the official's point of view that it looks like Rodon actually has headed the ball.
Yeah, so that's still Justin. It's
so obvious. It's so obvious. It is, but I'm just looking at the biomechanics of the human body and what it might look like.
Well, I think the officials will appreciate you doing that, but I don't think there's really any defence of them, it's got to be said. So Leeds are now a point behind both Ipswich and Leicester, who are level on points, but Leicester do have a game in hand. Justin, let me ask you this question. Are Leeds United now the underdogs in this promotion race? Not too long ago, it looked like they were the favourites for promotion. Now, would you say they are the underdogs in this situation?
On a technicality, yes. I mean, they're probably the team that are most out of form on the pitch out of the other two, out of Leicester and Ipswich. They are currently sitting third. They're a point behind Ipswich, and Leicester have a game in hand. So on those variables, they fill every criteria as the underdog. So yeah, I would say they are. But I think weirdly, they're the team that convinces me the most. If they've got all their players or even half their players back fit and at their half best, they're the team that convinces me the most. So it's hard for me to really go, yes, they are the underdogs, but on a technicality, they are.
Yeah, I mean, factually, they are, I guess, because they are a point behind the top two. And performances are certainly concerning. So I think if you're looking at it from a purely performance perspective, I would say they are the underdogs because, I mean, Leicester, yes, they dropped points against Millwall, but they have got that game in hand and still have enough quality about them to surely get promotion over the line, whereas Ipswich, yes, have dropped points in the last 2 games now, but they're not playing as badly as Leeds have been since this international break. I think that goes without saying, really. So I think you would make Leeds the underdogs in this situation, and they've desperately got to turn it around because at the moment I'm seeing very little encouragement from these games from since the international break. Yes, they've only lost 1 in that time, and I suppose, in a way, good teams still get results even when they don't play particularly well. But it's startling how poor they've been. They're playing. It's the poorest they played all season, isn't it? They weren't great at the start of the season, but this is without a doubt the poorest they've been playing, and it's happening at the worst possible time. Quick diversion just in Leeds midfielder. Stuart Dallas has announced he'll be retiring at the end of the season. The 32-year-old hasn't played a game for 2 years because of injury. He said in a club statement that he was devastated, but he'll be eternally grateful that he was able to live his dream of playing professional football. I think we've got to pay tribute, Justin, because I would say he's one of those who perhaps doesn't get appreciated much outside of Leeds because he was such a good player, wasn't he? Particularly in that Bielsa side.
Yeah, it's that Bielsa side. Again, like, weird being a rival fan and obviously being a Derby fan and being a rival fan, that you hold such hold that team in such high regard. And Stuart Dallas was one of the key components in that team. It's just the energy he had was just absolutely, it was just ridiculous. And so for his career to be cut short the way it has, because it just felt like he was one of those players who could keep doing what he was doing until he was 35, 36. I'm not saying it's a discredit to him. On a technical level, he's probably not as good as other players he's come up against, but his physical fitness was just it was insane. So for his career to be cut short by injury was incredibly sad. And obviously, Leeds put out a video of him announcing his retirement to his teammates and genuinely hit me in the feels. It was so sad, but hopefully he's still involved in football in some capacity.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, I think he's one of the most underappreciated players in Championship history because he was such a key cog in that Bielsa side. And when you think of that Bielsa side, the first players you think of are, I don't know, Hernandez, Glick, those kind of players. Whereas Dallas was, he was the beating heart of that team. His versatility meant that he was just able to do whatever he was asked of. And he was kind of the embodiment of that Bielsa side where he was, working so hard and was able to fill in wherever he was asked to. I mean, I think I'm right in saying, if my memory serves me correctly, that he was included in our second tier team of the season in our first season covering the Championship, playing at left back, even though he's traditionally a midfielder, isn't he? And then when you look at him just before he got injured, he was still playing 30-odd games a season in the Premier League, which I think goes to show a lot about his quality and how underappreciated he was. So it's a massive shame that he's had to retire. I mean, 32 years old, it's no age for retirement, is it? So it's massively sad. And yeah, hopefully he does decide to stay in football because I think he has a lot to offer in terms of what he can bring from a mentality perspective, because in terms of working your socks off and being able to do whatever your manager asks you, I think there are attributes which not every player has to offer. Quickly before we move on, Justin, Sunderland's team coach was given a parking fine outside of their hotel in Leeds before this game. Pictures of it went viral on Twitter, and one fan commented, "Well, there goes the summer transfer budget," which I enjoyed. Good stuff. Ipswich missed the chance to go top of the Championship and go 3 points clear of Leeds after drawing 0-0 with Watford. I mean, what a missed opportunity, Justin. Tom Cleverley's done a great job since coming in at Watford, we should say, and we'll give him credit in a bit. But when Ipswich are at home against a mid-table side with nothing else to play for, they've got to be winning this, Justin.
Yeah, they have. I mean, a lot of this game probably there's a lot of credit needs to go to Tom Cleverley. But as you say, we'll get into that in a moment. But I think the fact that they have drawn 0-0, and it's made worse by Leicester losing and Leeds dropping points as well, because the automatic promotion picture hasn't changed, and therefore Ipswich haven't taken that opportunity. But they can only control what they control, and what they struggled to control was just putting the ball in the back of the bloody net. It's quite interesting that aside from Leeds, both Ipswich and Leicester had some really big opportunities. So you've got to question: is the pressure getting to the players? Is the pressure getting to the players? Are we in the middle of the cooker? Are we in the middle of the bake? Are we 20 minutes into a 40-minute bake here? And the players are feeling the heat. I think that's the key thing. I think it's the key thing. And you've only got to look at how many saves Batman pulled off, Chaplin hitting the post. But that's where we're at. We're at a stage of the season where the margins are finer and finer and finer. And if you don't take them, it costs you. And it costed Ipswich.
Yeah, well, it did cost Ipswich. You are right. And I think it's interesting what you're saying there, Justin, because, well, you are right. Bachmann did have to make quite a few saves in the Watford goal. At the same time, there wasn't anything particularly of note that they created. This was actually their second lowest expected goals they've had at home all season. So that goes to show that the quality of chances they were making wasn't great. And first half they played well, but second half, which tends to be their business hours, they just didn't get going. And in fairness, they didn't look like conceding either, but they've got to be winning these types of games. And considering their remaining fixtures, if they won here, then it's almost like they would be able to smell promotion, particularly after Leicester and Leeds both failed to win in midweek. But now you're just getting all sorts of doubts over whether there's a hangover from the East Anglian derby. They can't afford for there to be a hangover, can they, Justin? They need a paracetamol and some Lucozade ASAP to get over this hangover, don't they? But here we are, Justin, the promotion race / title race. These three teams have been by far and away the best sides in the division this season, haven't they? But right now, none of them are in form. And it's quite mad how they've each been amongst the better teams we've ever seen at championship level, and now all seemingly having their wobbles.
It's incredible. It is incredible. And again, I think it's just the beauty of the championship. It really is. You've got three of the best teams here who are feeling it. They are bricking it, and there's no skirting around it. And it's the beauty and the pressure cooker that is the championship. It's making these three teams some of the coolest, calmest heads, some of the most experienced players as well. It's making them crumble. It's making them crumble. They are bricking it. They are shitting it. And that is the pressure cooker. That is the automatic promotion chase in the championship. When you've got teams breathing down your neck and you've got a fairly level playing field throughout the league as well. Teams can beat anybody, etc., etc., all the cliches. It just adds to that pressure. And these teams are not dealing with it. This is why they're not putting these chances that they get away. This is why they're not creating and they're not free-flowing. They are feeling the pressure. And again, it's just the beauty of this division, this league. It provides that. No other league can do this. No other league can do this. You've got Liverpool, City and Arsenal winning every bloody game at the top of the Premier League. No, these teams have gone shit now. That's the championship.
Yes, and you are absolutely right. It is fascinating how they are all just really, really bricking it. But, there's a lot at stake for these three teams. Like, will Ipswich get a better chance at promotion than this? Who knows? If Leicester don't go up, will they be in financial oblivion? Who knows? There's just a lot at stake for these three. And that's why I suppose they are having these wobbles. Let's quickly touch on this game from a Watford perspective, because it turns out, Justin, Tom Cleverley's the Messiah. He is doing an excellent job as interim manager at Watford, isn't he? Unbeaten after 5 games, drawn against Leeds, also got draws away at West Brom and Ipswich. Not a bad audition at all, is he?
No, he's unbeaten against Daniel Farker, Carlos Corberán and Kieran McKenna. He's got 3 clean sheets in 5. Very, very solid foundation to build on for them. It is really impressive, especially when you compare it to this point last season when Chris Wilder was in charge. An experienced manager at this level, big football personality, couldn't get a tune out of them. I know they did some changing around the playing squad, but Cleverley is a rookie. He's a rookie, and he's getting a team playing. When their season is done, he's getting them playing. He's getting them doing the invariable, the intangibles, the variables you don't really count, the hard work, the graft, and he's doing that, and he's getting results as well. So fair play to Tom Cleverley. Let's not get suckered in too much, because he could be out of a job in September.
You say that, but have you watched Dune 2 yet, Justin?
Not yet, no.
Not yet. It just kind of reminds me of in that where Timothy Chalamet is essentially the Messiah, and everyone is saying this guy is the Messiah, he's the prophet, and it kind of feels like that with Tom Cleverley. You got the Pozzos and Troy Deeney and Alman Abdi and what have you, all just stood around saying he is the chosen one. And you know what? I'm gonna get lost with the hype because I'm quite enjoying it. Tom Cleverley, the Messiah. And finally, just before we have a quick break, Justin, Southampton got their first win in 4 by beating Coventry 2-1, with Ipswich, Leeds and Leicester all failing to win. It's got Southampton fans a bit excited. They're 9 points off the top 2, but I've got 2 games in hand, and they have still got to play Leicester and Leeds. So a faint hope that Southampton might be back in the automatic promotion race, although still very much a long shot, isn't it? I appreciate the ambition of Southampton fans, but when they have only won 3 from 8, you know, it'll be quite the turnaround in form. But look, a disappointing result for Coventry. They may have fancied their chances of winning this after beating Leeds last weekend, but it wasn't to be. Haji Wright did miss a penalty after 10 minutes. Could prove to be a costly miss because it's possibly opened the doors back open for teams to get into the top 6 race again, as we'll discuss after this break. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. So let's have a look at the top 6 race and mostly the relegation battle, Justin, because I mean that's tight as ever, and there was a game which had massive implications in both of those battles because a 7-minute hat-trick from Militon Osmajic saw Preston beat Huddersfield 4-1. Now, there may be some neutrals listening, Justin, and they may be saying, who the hell is Militon Osmajic? Which I think would be understandable. He's their Montenegrin striker at Preston, who they signed for a club record fee. And the reason why I say maybe people aren't too aware of him outside of Preston is because we haven't mentioned him much this season, and that's because he hasn't done a whole lot. Before this game, he had only scored 5 league goals in 31 games. So it's got to be said, when I saw him score a 7-minute hat-trick, it really came out of nowhere, Justin.
It did. I can't quite work him out as a player, but we can give him some benefit of the doubt. That being said, going back to not being able to work him out, I just did some stats around him. He's offside a lot. He averages the 5th most in the league. He's not the best at holding the ball up, but you look at his goals here against Huddersfield. There were 3 brilliantly taken goals. Yeah. It looked like the pace he had just came from nowhere. I don't know whether I can't remember if it was Matty Pearson now or whoever it was up against was running in treacle, and they were just really slow. But Osmajic looked fast. He looked pacey. But yeah, his 3 goals were taken so brilliantly. He's still 24. He's in a new country at a new club. He's a club record signing, so there's a bit of pressure there. He's also at a team who don't create an awful lot of chances. So 8 goals in 31 probably does mask over things a little bit. It's not amazing, but it might spark him into life for next season. But 7-minute hat-tricks, enough to give you the confidence going into the next game. Just stay on side, Militon. You might be a championship goat.
Well, I believe I'm right in saying that up until very recently, WhoScored.com had given Osmajic the lowest rating of any striker in the Championship this season who had played over a certain number of games. He's only started 3 league games this calendar year and has mainly come off the bench in recent times. So I don't really know if he's a good player. When it's Preston North End, and I mean this with no disrespect, they're not the biggest spenders in the world. So when they do shell out a club record fee on a striker, and he's not starting week in, week out, then it does make your eyebrows raise a bit. But I mean, we've seen flashes of what he can do. Obviously, this hat-trick is quite a good flash. But then the other flashes we've seen were genuinely around the time when he first joined. Otherwise, I can't say I've been massively impressed with him. However, give him a bit of doubt, give him benefit of the doubt. He might just be a confident striker. So, look, he's certainly earned a start in the next game, hasn't he? Whether he's found his shooting boots all of a sudden, I don't know though. Justin, let's ask the question: Are Preston's playoff hopes still alive? Because we were saying in Sunday's episode that it was looking more and more likely that it was going to be between Coventry and Norwich, but Preston are now level on points with Coventry after this round of games. So let me have it. What do you think?
Well, if Osmajic is a confident man, then yeah, I certainly think he's going to lead them to the playoffs. I think the playoff hopes probably still are alive. I think you'd be a bit daft to rule them out at this stage. You've got a game in hand and they're 5 points off Norwich in 6th. So yeah, you've got to be in that position where you'd hope Preston can make a go of it. But I think any North End fan would have taken being 5 points off the playoffs at this stage in the season before the start of the campaign. I expected them to underachieve massively this season, and there were periods of that massively. There were periods where a lot of people wanted Ryan Lowe out, but they're outperforming other teams and they're playing consistency more so than the likes of Sunderland, Watford, and they could even finish above Hull and Borough, teams that were very well fancied for a playoff push. And I think that's a very good season. I think Preston still are going under the radar right now.
Well, I'll tell you what, a massive game this coming weekend, Justin, is Preston v Norwich. That is coming up this weekend. So in terms of the playoff race, that is absolutely huge. And if they win that, then it'll certainly be one to make you go, with Preston's playoff hopes. I mean, it has got to be caveated that Preston have still got to play Southampton, Leicester and West Brom. So as far as remaining fixtures go, it's a pretty brutal one for them. So that has got to be, held against them. And that's why I would say at this stage, despite what the table is saying, it's still very much an outside chance that Preston will get a playoff place. But if they do get there, then they'll have bloody earned it, won't they? So I think it's fair to say it's a bit of a long shot, but the flame is still there. And as you say, considering the ups and downs they've had this season, I think they would have taken that at this stage. A pretty depressing one for Huddersfield Town fans to take, though. They got a great win at Millwall last weekend to give them a bit of hope, and then they follow it up with this. They're still outside of the bottom three, but only on goal difference ahead of Sheffield Wednesday. And understandably, fans are really panicking and they're frustrated. A good example of that frustration was shown after the game with their striker Delano Bergzorg arguing with supporters afterwards. Town fans, they're not happy, and rightly so, Justin.
Yeah, absolutely, rightly so. But I can understand why they're frustrated. I mean, you look at how well taken the Josh Koroma goal was, for example. There is ability in this team, but it's just that consistency just isn't there. Even I know I kind of feel like a broken record saying it, but it just feels like chalk and cheese to when they were performing well under John Worthington. I know Worthington hasn't had as many games as Brighton Wright, but I'm not coming away from this Huddersfield team thinking Brighton Wright knows what he's doing. He knows how to get the best out of this squad and tap into the quality that is with the team, or limited quality that the team has. Not really playing into it. I think Darren Moore even maybe did a better job of it because they were harder to beat and harder to break down under Darren Moore. They just couldn't score, and that's the key thing. And as well as that, the game management's terrible. The second half, the amount of goals they concede in the second half of games is dreadful. It's so significantly higher than their first half of games.
Well, Justin, on that, in the game against Preston, in the second half, they only had one shot. And that says a lot, doesn't it?
What happens? What do they have in their half-time tea? It begs...
Morphine.
You don't want to think, morphine and nitol. It's ridiculous. It just, that level of drop-off is so significant. And again, when you're a team that are down there feeling the pressure and you're trying to get consistency, confidence and results, no wonder Bergzorg's arguing with fans.
Yeah, well, after the game, Andre Brighton-Writer laid into the team's performance, saying it was terrible, it was poor, and he's not wrong. But I think he's got to take the blame for this. When he came in, it looked like he was a pretty smart choice from a Huddersfield perspective, because his record previously over in Germany was sublime at making teams overperform to what their resources are, what the talent in the squad is like, that kind of thing. And we've still yet to really see that. He had a great start, but since then we're not really seeing anything, and it's really quite worrying. I think you really hit the nail on the head, Justin, that under Darren Moore, sure, they weren't winning many games, but they were certainly hard to beat, whereas under Brighton, we're not seeing that at all. And I think this may be kind of a good case study of why, when you're in a position like Huddersfield Town are, you kind of need a manager who knows the league. I know that's a very, old pundit kind of way of talking about, he needs to know the league. But I think this is a good example of where knowing the league would be quite useful. And the Bergzorg thing sums up how frustrated fans are. It's interesting that Huddersfield's newish owner, Kevin Nagel, we've mentioned him before, how he likes to tweet a lot, a bit too much if you ask me. Well, he was giving it the big guns when Andre Brighton-Writer was appointed, but now hasn't tweeted about Huddersfield in over a month. So he's gone quiet all of a sudden. But look, the relegation battle is changing all the time, so things can alter very quickly. But from a Huddersfield perspective, we're running thin on signs of encouragement for them now, aren't we? By the way, second last game of the season, Huddersfield v Birmingham. As time goes on, that game is looking more and more massive, and that's because Birmingham have now lost 8 in 10 games after being beaten 1-0 at home by Cardiff. It knocks them down to 23rd in the table, and this is a particularly bad result, isn't it, Justin? No disrespect to Cardiff, but Birmingham are playing a side at home who are mid-table. Their season's essentially over. Cardiff had lost 3 in 4 heading into this, and Birmingham still lost. And this was the game to start their turnaround, wasn't it? But it wasn't to be.
Yeah, when you're playing against a team who've got nothing to play for, you've got to be looking at 3 points. You've got to look at that game and go, look, we need to pick something up here. Because if you're coming up against the Ipswiches, the Leeds, the Leicesters, they're free hits. But the teams that are mid-table with fuck all, nothing to do this season, they want to go on holiday. They don't want to get injured for next season for various reasons. You've got to be taking the 3 points, and I think it was Dion Sanderson. I think it was his reaction to Josh Bowler's goal with the goal they conceded. Birmingham conceded. They looked defeated. Birmingham looked defeated. I think his head was in his hands and he was straight on the floor, face down on the floor. It just looked like a team who was beaten. It was beaten. And Gary Rowett post game was quite defiant, and he said that his players needed a reality check, and he's absolutely spot on. The players do. And I know I can point the finger at Wayne Rooney and say it's all his fault, because it is. But at the same time, the players do have to take responsibility for this poor run of form that they've had under Mark Venus and now Gary Rowett, because that is, you've had, how many managers have they had this season? 5?
Well, technically 5, yes, if you counted Mark Venus, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, so Eust, Rooney, Mowbray, Venus, and now Rowett. 4 of those managers, they've been pretty poor. Mowbray, not so much with Mowbray.
Yeah.
Three of the managers. They've been
I was going to say 3. Let's be a bit fair to old Mobes here. He wasn't there for long, but he definitely did too poorly, games. I don't think.
He won games. But
I think you're right, Justin. I think you are right. Look, if Birmingham get relegated this season, and we do kind of a analysis of where it's all gone wrong, obviously we will talk about the Rooney appointment and say that was the moment where everything kind of turned on its head. But I think it's all too easy to just point to that and say that's the reason why they went down. Because look, he was sacked over 4 months ago. A lot of time has gone since he was dismissed, and they're still playing really poorly. You may even argue that they're playing even worse now than they were under Rooney. And I don't think that's necessarily Gary Rowett's fault, because he's only been there for a handful of games, but still, they were so poor going forwards against Cardiff. They went behind in the 65th minute and only had 2 shots after that. Well, where's the urgency? You're losing in a game which you should be winning. And yes, Cardiff, they haven't got anything else to play for this season, but I suppose it's kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it, where you could say they haven't got anything else to play for, so their heads, they may be on the beach, but at the same time you could look at it and say they're not feeling the pressure because they haven't got anything to play for. Yeah. Birmingham clearly are feeling the pressure if they're only managing 2 shots after going behind in the 65th minute. I mean, sometimes I've been giving Birmingham the benefit of the doubt because they have had some tricky games, but when you're losing at home to Cardiff, that's bad. That is, without a doubt, bad. In other news from a Birmingham perspective, it's a bit of a strange one considering where they're at, but Birmingham are a step closer to a new stadium after they purchased land nearby to St Andrews. The club said they want to spend £2 to £3 billion on building a new super stadium and are aiming to move in by 2029. Chairman Tom Wagner says the project would still go ahead even if Birmingham get relegated, which is interesting, Justin.
I've got questions. What's a super stadium?
It's a stadium except super. So I guess it's just a bigger stadium than usual.
What ticks, if it's got those beer dispensers that if you put your cup on it at the bottom and it fills up from the bottom, I think that qualifies it. I think that qualifies it. Doesn't matter about the capacity or the facilities. If you've got those beer dispensers that fill the cup up from the bottom, it's a super stadium. If it hasn't, get in the bin, Tom Wagner. You're lying.
Have you ever been to any of those massive stadiums in America?
No, I haven't.
They, I tell you what, they are bloody impressive. I went to Atlanta United Stadium, and it is. I mean, it puts Wembley to shame. Put it that way. It is just absolutely beautiful, and you know, the attention to detail in each seat is just really, really really incredible. So if they bring that to Birmingham and England and make it a new trend, then I'm all for it, Justin, is what I'm saying.
The other thing I really want to point out is really important. 2029 is vastly ambitious. Yeah. And he's used to these super stadiums being built in America. This is the UK, Tom Wagner.
Yeah.
Shit weather.
You don't know how it works here, mate.
Shit weather and tea breaks. That's never getting finished.
Have you heard of HS2?
Exactly. So,
2029, ambitious, Tom. But
see you in 2050.
Yeah, best of luck to you. Let's go to Sheffield Wednesday. They came from 2-0 down to draw 2-2 with Norwich. Utter carnage here, Justin. Wednesday were 2-0 down until the 78th minute before managing to salvage a point. Utter chaos, Justin.
Yeah, the chaos of the set pieces they scored from as well was beautiful. Beautiful. Literally, it felt like 50 players surrounding the goalkeeper in the 6-yard box and just putting the balls on top of the 6-yard box. It was so simple but fantastic. It's like when you find a glitch in FIFA when it was good, and you just knew how to score goals from set pieces. That's what it felt like. It was fantastic. But in the context of Huddersfield, Stoke, Blackburn, Birmingham, all dropping points and losing, this comeback is massive. It's absolutely massive. I know it's only a point, but the manner of the comeback, the opposition they played against, it's especially huge off the back of 3 points as well in the previous game. That you can't understand how big a win, how big a comeback and draw this is for Wednesday, because it keeps them within touching distance of the teams above them, which are the likes of Stoke, Blackburn and Millwall.
Yeah, well, it's another perfect example of Wednesday just not giving up, isn't it? I mean, how many times this season has it looked like Wednesday may finally be submitting to relegation, and then suddenly they get a second wind out of nowhere? It's so impressive, and that is why Danny Rule deserves so much credit for the season they're having. I mean, I did laugh at David Wagner was joking around with Danny Rule after the game and said his tactics in this one were like a German Tony Pulis, which I'm not sure is a compliment, but
I think it is.
Maybe not from a Wednesday perspective anyway, because he had a shocker there, didn't he? Pulis eyes. But Danny Wall's got to do what he's got to do at this stage of the season, isn't it? I mean, it is a bit strange how Wednesday have had so many positive games and so many encouraging spells of form, yet they've still not been out of the relegation zone all season. And now we're getting to a stage where there's 4 games left, and it would be remarkable, wouldn't it, if they spend the whole season pretty much in the relegation zone and then get out on the last day of the season. It would be absolutely marvellous. But I mean, Justin, it's crunch time for Wednesday, isn't it? Their next 2 games are Stoke and Blackburn. 2 massive games, and with them being only in the relegation zone on goal difference, it could be the moment where Wednesday finally get their heads above the water, because they've had to hold their breath for a bloody long time, haven't they? But it may be the week where it finally changes for them, and that would be quite remarkable, wouldn't it? And the final game we'll touch on, Justin, a bit of an eye-catching one. Bristol City 5, Blackburn 0. I mean, been repeatedly saying recently how Blackburn are really hard to beat. Yeah, really proving my point here. I mean, Bristol City were exceptional, and surprisingly, the Liam Manning out brigade have gone a bit quieter after this one, and particularly after their recent results. 10 points from an available 12 now for them, including this and a win over Leicester. Not conceded a goal in that time either, by the way, so very impressive from Liam Manning's side. And look, their season's over, but these are all encouraging signs heading into next season, aren't they? And will hopefully show Bristol City fans that he is the right man in the long term. I still think he can't be judged too much on this season, because he wants to change how they want to play and needs at least a summer transfer window, in my opinion. So they could be a side who do bits next season. It would help if they kept hold of Tommy Conway, wouldn't it, Justin? He scored 2 here, played sublimely, and has been linked with a move away this summer. His contract expires at the end of next season. And look, we're fans of him, aren't we, Justin? We'd like to see him stay in the old red and white at Ashton Gate, wouldn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I think anyone who's a long-time listener knows how big of a fan I have of Tommy Conway. And I hold on to the notion that if he stays fit, and if Manning can get a similar tune out of this Bristol City side that he did at MK Dons and Oxford last season, I think Tommy Conway could be a shoo-in for a Golden Boot. I just think he's such an instinctive finisher that he just needs to stay fit and keep maturing. But with a year left on his deal, and if he doesn't agree in a contract, you know me, I'd sell within a heartbeat.
Well, it depends what offer comes through, because I think Conway may be looking at this and thinking, I could get a decent move next summer if I hold out on not signing a new deal. So I won't blame him if he didn't do that. If he does, then it must be quite convincing, the argument that Bristol City put forward about the project that they've got going forwards with Liam Manning there. I think Conway probably has a bit of a disappointing season, considering I think he got double figures last season, didn't he? He's only got 9 this season so far, and he has suffered a bit with injury, but still, I think maybe it's not been the step up that maybe people were expecting. But look, we've seen in the FA Cup, for example, what he can do, and considering he is only 21, I think he has the potential to be a really top striker. So, yeah, let's see what happens with him in the summer. If they do have to sell him because they can't convince him to sign a new deal, then that would be a shame. But Bristol City have got to do what they've got to do, because it's better to make some money on him than lose him for free. He's a really good player, so it would be a massive shame, but I think they can use that money to reinvest back into the squad, you would have thought, particularly with the new manager in charge. So there we go, Justin. Those have been the midweek games in the Championship, and this has been the Second Tier Podcast. And of course, you know what's happening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back again tomorrow with the preview show brought to you by SBK as we make our predictions for the weekends in the Championship. I mean, after this weekend, Justin, we've only got 3 games left. Business end of the season, mate. We are fully in it at this stage, aren't we? So we look forward to seeing you tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, to go through our predictions for the weekend, and we shall see you then. But otherwise, this has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.